I am aware of the PhD Chamber's long history and the accumulated insights of 111 years which have guided its many initiatives to sensitize our business conglomerates on issues relevant to the growth of industry, trade, economy, and the nation at large. The PhD Chamber provides an effective platform, industry-government interface in planning and implementing policies for economic growth and development of the country as well as of our states. I congratulate you all and your association on the successful journey so far. Ladies and gentlemen, we should take pride in the economic resilience that India has demonstrated in the last 8 years despite the global economic slowdown resulting from the international economic crisis of 2008. This reflects a maturing of our economic thought of the country and the growing competitiveness of our enterprises. This has happened even as our economy has become more integrated with global markets. It shows that participation in globalization and achieving economic resilience can be sometimes a simultaneous process. Today, India is moving from the phase of 1991 economic reforms to a new era of sustainable development. The priority now must not only be to accelerating growth, but on the multi-dimensional aspects of growth, equity, that is inclusion, employment generation, and environmental sustainability of economic and social processes. While we should take justifiable pride in our successes, it is important to recognize several challenges that we are now experiencing in the areas of poverty, hunger, health, and education. Economic growth and macroeconomic stability are necessary for reducing poverty. International experience by and large shows that countries which are most successful in reducing poverty are the ones which have combined rapid growth with equity in sustaining the growth process. In such a strategy, public policies influence both the distribution of income and the processes of income generation. Although India is now growing at the annual rate of 7.5% per annum, the sustainability of the growth process would require a significant increase in the rate of investment, particularly in the infrastructure sectors as well as the revitalization of our international trading sector, particularly the exports. While growth is necessary for poverty reduction, it is well known that it may not trickle down to the bottom group unless some preconditions are met. Thus, there is a need to go beyond the establishment of social safety nets to protect the vulnerable groups of our society from the risks inherent in the processes of change and focus on providing decent employment and raising incomes of the weaker section through explicit policy interventions. India, ladies and gentlemen, needs to create 12 million new jobs per annum to absorb new entrants to the labor force. The available data on employment and unemployment point to significant gaps in our performance. However, it needs to be emphasized that the importance of growth cannot be ignored. A strategy which focuses primarily on reducing inequality through redistribution of income but ignores growth is unlikely to lead to a sustained process of poverty reduction. Ladies and gentlemen, we live in a country where a large number of weaker sections depend on agriculture for their livelihood. Thus, achieving the goal of poverty elimination as well as inclusive growth depends on sustained improvement of agricultural production, agricultural productivity, and agricultural processes that facilitate migration of agricultural workers to expand and diversify the rural non-farm sector. Determined efforts have to be made to improve income and employment opportunities in the non-farm rural sector. That is the challenge if we take employment generation very seriously. At this stage, we need to realize that for rapid poverty reduction, it is equally important to address worsening inequalities, eliminating the worst form of deprivation in education, in health and malnutrition, and performance of the public delivery systems in these sectors. While discussing poverty, there is a very important dimension of poverty which, if not tackled effectively, can cause a major roadblock for India to achieve its desired growth objective. This important element is of addressing the challenge of hunger within our country. Hunger and malnutrition are to a large extent two sides of the same coin. While India has been considerably successful in income poverty reduction, it has not been very successful in reducing malnutrition. Malnutrition is seriously retarding improvements in human development and a further reduction of child mortality. Ladies and gentlemen, successive governments over the decades have been responding with a number of measures to overcome hunger and malnutrition. Nevertheless, a large and diverse country like India with a federal structure faces an alarming situation with regard to the prevalence of widespread hunger and malnutrition. It requires social will alongside political will, and when well-planned participatory massive decentralized effort from top to bottom by all stakeholders: government, rural and urban local bodies, state governments, civil society organizations, private sector and professional institutions to achieve zero growth and malnutrition as rapidly as is desirable, and put in place an effective national alliance against hunger and malnutrition. Improvement of incomes of the weaker sections and supply of environmental and health services are long-term solution to the eradication of malnutrition. In the short run, however, direct nutrition interventions should also be a priority concern in policy making. It is important to mention that health is an important aspect of overall development of a country. Despite India's impressive economic performance after the introduction of economic reforms in 1991, progress in advancing the health status of our people has been rather slow and uneven. Large inequalities in health and access to health services continue to persist and have even widened across states, between rural and urban areas, and within communities. Health is produced in the social, economic, political, and cultural context of a given society, and we have to make the environment as friendly as is possible to achieve our objectives in the areas of health. The three major forms of inequities have been largely responsible for the persistent and even widening differences in health outcome. That is, historical inherited inequities, socio-economic inequalities in the process of development, and inequalities in the provision and access to health services. Among the various factors that influence health availability, accessibility, and affordability of health services are important determinants for improving the health of our population. In devising health policies, special attention has to be paid to improving the health status of our women and children, particularly in the rural and tribal areas. Healthcare financing and provisioning arrangements play a critical role in reducing or perpetuating existing inequities and shape the pattern of health services use as well as expenditure. Particular attention therefore has to be paid to the improvement of preventive health care facilities, that is, provision of safe drinking water, childhood immunization, and antenatal care. Health security needs to become an urgent national priority. It is equally important to lay increased emphasis on the education front. The right to compulsory education until the age of 14 years is now enshrined in our Constitution. There has been a very large increase in enrollment rates in the last 10 to 15 years, but the quality of school education leaves much to be desired. Dropout rates remain very high, and the first generation learners face acute difficulties of adjustment to the requirements of the educational system. A major deficiency is the quality of teachers. India has also been seen significant growth in the number of higher and technical education institutions and a corresponding growth in enrollment. Yet, the higher education system also faces numerous challenges in terms of both quantity and quality. With the help of government schemes, even if our children manage to study till 12th standards, we need to make sure that we are able to impart them with adequate skills commensurate with the demands of the growing job market. Thus, the startup culture needs to make the best use of the huge manpower that India has got, not just quantitatively but qualitatively as well. With improvements in the quality of education, to improve teaching and learning outcomes, effective education to job linkages will be of critical importance. Manpower for skill and occupational needs in the next 20 years will be high as our economy urbanizes, modernizes, and becomes more service sector oriented. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a need for addressing the skill gap within the country in order to upskill the workforce, for which our education system must be employment friendly, employment oriented, with adequate skills being imparted at various stages of the educational ladder. It is therefore imperative to mention that inclusiveness is the key to tap unlimited potential that India holds in its human intellect, as also to take advantage of the demographic dividend. It is thus time that we evaluate where do we stand at this point in time in terms of education and skill development, so as to meet the challenges of rapid development. Additionally, the focus equally needs to be on higher education. Thousands of students from India are going abroad for higher education. This is a reflection of quantitative and qualitative gaps in the system of higher education in our own country. Considering the intellectual resources and opportunities in India, there is therefore need for re-evaluating, reassessing, and reforming the system of higher education. Higher education in our own country. Considering the intellectual resources and opportunities in India, there is therefore need for re-evaluating, reassessing, and reforming the system of higher education. Successive governments have pledged to increase spending on education to 6% of GDP, but actual spending has hovered around 4% for the last several years. Both health and education need to move up in terms of national priorities for public expenditure. Ladies and gentlemen, today India has a complex number of laws governing labor use in the organized sector. Your President, in his opening address, has also highlighted the complications created by the complexity of labor laws. The non-implementation of these labor laws can give rise to severe penalties for industrialists and government officials who are charged with the responsibility of implementation. To escape these consequences, industry prefers to hire contract workers in place of full-time permanent workers, causing insecurity, lowering of standards of living, and reduced access to good health care and education facilities for the workers, leading to deterioration in the quality of human resources in our country. Government, industry, and labor therefore need to sit together to find workable, practical solutions to reinforcing and reforming labor laws and regulations with a view to create more job opportunities. Special efforts must be made to increase women's participation in labor force by providing them access to education and relevant skills. I believe that in line with the ongoing talks on ease of doing business in our country, it is important to provide a conducive atmosphere for industry and businesses to create a win-win situation for both the workforce and industry. This brings me to the theme of this meeting, transforming India through Skill India. I would like to mention that India has to adopt a multi-pronged strategy that includes rapid growth for reducing poverty and creating employment opportunities, improving access to essential services in health and education, especially for the weaker section, empowerment through education and skill development, and creating new job opportunities. I strongly believe that the future holds great promise for our country. We can achieve the targets we have set for ourselves, provided we approach the task and with courage and with conviction. I believe that improved training and skill development have to be a critical part of any effective employment strategy. Ladies and gentlemen, economic policies have to be designed in a manner that the redistributive process does not feed off the public finances and the growth process itself is not hampered. To achieve this objective, inclusive development needs to be combined with the consolidation of public finances, financial stability, and employment generation and economic growth and protection of environment. I would say that the role of Indian states has become critical to ensure adequate growth enhancing expenditure, to press ahead with fiscal consolidation process, and to push further India's growth story. As PhD Chamber is closely working with states, I am sure you will continue to act as a catalyst for the enforcement and enhancement of growth in the states. The record initiative undertaken by the PhD Chamber for the promotion of skill development and its keen interest in fostering an all-inclusive growth are indeed very commendable. I am therefore sure PhD Chamber will continue to provide its expertise to the nation to enhance and promote private participation in our growth and development of the Indian nation. With these words, I thank you for inviting me to address this august gathering.